All right, the European Parliament has approved sweeping reforms to the EU's visa suspension mechanism, introducing provisions that now explicitly target citizenship by investment programs, and they threaten to actually reshape the Caribbean's industry access to the Schengen area. We've had other videos on this. This came out in an Emmy newsletter, and what they're doing is, I mentioned before about the EU wanting these citizenship by investment programs to have a donation threshold of at least 200,000 US dollars, and they did that. And then what happened was now they want more residency put in because there was no residency put in at all to get the passport. So St. Kitts was the first one to come out with that they're willing to do a month. And I was thinking, I don't think the EU is going to go with that. And it didn't take long, and now they're already saying they're going to shoot that down. I don't think there's going to be peace with the EU until these fast track programs, they're probably going to have to end their fast track programs and probably come out with at least a 2 or 3 year period, and you're going to have to be residing in that, and not just you, but your family too, if they want to get the citizenship too. I can tell you it's not going to work otherwise, and I'm going to tell you why. They're having meetings on this, and I think what's going to happen is, and they're not really telling these countries what they need to do. This is the problem. They're not saying, hey, if you just do this, we'll leave you alone. They're just throw this stuff out. The fast track programs jump and they get it done. And then a few months later, it didn't take long, man, that carrot's coming out again. They just keep feeding it out. And I don't think it's going to work until there's a pure residency programs that come into force. You can go with these other fast track programs that are cheaper than the fast track programs in the Caribbean. But the problem with that is those programs, the visa-free travel is really bad. You're going to find out that you're going to end up having to get another fast track program. And I see so many people end up getting these programs, and they end up going back and they get a St. Kitts or an Antigua passport all over again. So they ended up just taking that money that they threw out in one of these African passports, and they just throw it down a rat hole, and they find out they don't ever use them. I see this happen in Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic's got an awful passport. People get it and they never use that passport. They think they do, but they don't. You'd be better off paying more for a fast track program, or pick your bags up and move and get in a residency by investment country that's really, really good, like either Ireland or Barbados. Barbados is the best passport in the Caribbean. They don't have a fast track program. The other one is one of the best in the world. It's probably in the top 3 now, and that's Ireland. The only thing I don't like about Ireland is they do have an inheritance tax. It's actually pretty high, but if you get the passport, move out, you solve that problem, but it kicks in after 5 years of living there. So this is the problem that you have, but you can get the passport, in about 6 years there. So that's a good program to go on. You just have to deal with the weather. But this is the problem that you're going to have to deal with. I'm going to just highlight and give you an idea. If you get the fast track program, and I can tell you, I from knowing the government in St. Kitts and the people in St. Kitts, they're not going to cave. They're not going to end up losing their visa-free travel. Okay, they will end up coming out with either the residency by investment program that suits the EU to keep their visa-free travel. I don't see that happen unless the EU just automatically just shuts down their visa-free travel to Europe. I don't really see a problem with that much with me, because I don't ever go to Europe except to the UK. And then I go to UK and then go to the other areas. I just don't go to any other places in the EU. Maybe a lot of you people that are watching this does. But where it would affect me is if they hit the UK, but that's not part of the EU anymore, so you don't have a problem there. But anyway, the MEPs that we're talking about back the legislation 518 to 96 on October the 7th with 24 abstentions. Now, the reform expands grounds for suspending visa-free travel to include citizenship by investment programs, raising security concerns, hybrid threats, human rights violations, failure to comply with international court decisions, and lack of alignment with EU visa policy. Also, folks, you can do us a big favor. We do not monetize our channel. It would help us out tremendously. If you like our videos, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button right on your screen. You'll get new videos automatically as they come out. And I would like to hear from you. If you got a question or comment, just put it below. And if you want to legally get your income taxes to zero, how to get a second passport as quick as 4 months to a year, just contact us at our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com. Now, again, ME Newsletter came out with this, and they were talking about the final council approval pending. The legislation awaits formal adoption by the Council of the European Union before entering into force 20 days after publication of the official journal. The measure will apply to 61 countries whose nationals currently enjoy visa-free access to the Schengen area. St. Kitts and all the other fast-track programs are included in this list. And these are, countries that can go to these Schengen countries, some of them up to 90 days within any 180-day period. Now, Rapporteur Matjaz Nemec, he framed the changes as a policy, foreign policy tool, noting Europe remains the world's most visited continent by tourists and business travelers alike. And he mentioned that our visa policy is therefore one of the strongest foreign policy tools. And they pretty much can dictate, if you go to Europe a lot, this can affect you a lot, because getting visas everywhere you go is a pain in the butt. The modernized mechanism enables the EU to suspend visa-free travel in the case of serious human rights violations and can target suspensions of government officials or other groups. So you're going to have to decide, is this something you're really going to need? Because if you're going to need it, then it might be better going to one of these other programs that are a lot cheaper. Because, well, I can tell you, St. Kitts and Antigua, I know is a fact, they're not going to lose their visa-free travel. So they will do away with their fast-track programs before they have to lose all that visa-free travel. They're just not going to do that. But the additions align grounds for suspension with the grounds for granting visa waivers initially, create what the legislation describes as a deterrent effect. New provisions specifically cover violations of the United Nations Charter, international human rights, or humanitarian law, and breaches of international court decisions. Now, the reform also lowers the bar for triggering suspensions, alongside operating a citizenship by investment program that raises security concerns. A 30% increase in overstays, refused entries, or serious criminal offenses now constitute grounds for action, as does an asylum recognition rate below 20%. The Commission can deviate from these thresholds in justified cases. Now, the initial suspension period extends from 9 months to 12 months, with a possible 24-month extension if issues persist. The mechanism introduces targeted restrictions, allowing the EU to suspend visa exemptions for specific groups such as government officials rather than entire populations. The flexibility aims to deter third country governments from violating the terms of their short stay visa waiver agreements. The EU gains more latitude to suspend visa freedom for government officials who may bear responsibility for government's human rights breaches or other violations. Now, the EU will never be happy, and I can tell you this. No matter what happens here, they're always going to be changing it. It's not several years down the road. It's several months. They just keep changing this. I don't think that will ever stop. The only way that these countries won't comply anymore is they've just said the heck with it, and they just give up the visa-free travel, and then they can do whatever they want to do, like these African countries are doing. But like I said, you're going to go through a lot of trouble with these African passports when you travel, because you get scrutinized a lot. You don't look like you're from these countries. Wonder what kind of crap you've been involved with, and it's just all kinds of problems getting these visas. Some of these countries too also make you get the ticket before you get the visa. That's a real problem, because if you get turned down for the visa and you've lost the ticket, because a lot of these tickets are non-cancelable, so you end up losing. It's a real pain in the butt. Now, the 5 Caribbean citizenship by investment jurisdictions, which are Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia, implemented region-wide reforms last year following pressure from both the EU and the United States. The reforms included mandatory interviews, enhanced due diligence, and establishing a unified regulatory authority. They went on to talk about here that Daisy Joseph Andel, partner at Joseph Rowe Law, commended the Caribbean approach. And she says that in a more than any other time in this almost 5 decades of citizenship by investment business in the Caribbean, current governments are showing themselves to be the resolute in creating a responsible, transparent investment migration sector that benefits both our economies and our people. I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why I do. You look at all these EU countries that let all these refugees in, that they didn't even vet those people. They didn't have any background check countries coming in. And the U.S. even did this when Biden was in. They were letting millions of people in, no check-in, no nothing. These guys were gang members. So the U.S. and the EU can't really bitch and complain when they're letting all these people in their countries on these, they call them refugee status, but a lot of these people, they weren't even checking them out at all. They were just letting them in. This is what causes all kinds of crime. And St. Kitts and these other fast-track programs, they're going through thorough background checks, and they don't like that. This is the thing that bothers me a lot. But they were talking about here that, that she pointed out, pointed to imminent legislation established a genuine link between investors and respective Caribbean islands, with scope stretching into enforcing transparent monitoring and revocation and mechanisms. Well, they already do revoke a lot of citizenships in these fast-track programs that on people that they find out that were involved with crazy stuff after they get a passport. I mean, I've had clients that have actually done that. So, they're already doing that. But she emphasized the islands are not taking the privilege of visa-free access for granted and are not seeking to take anything away from the EU and other international partners. Now, Kevin Hossam, they were talking about here in the article, which was founder and chairman of EC Holdings, however, does not agree that cultural integration will be enough to satisfy the EU, and I totally agree with that. He argues that the bloc has not given the Caribbean a single guideline. They have not given one suggestion, and the EU might have hinted through the Malta judgment of what they were looking for, but they will never be happy once you have a citizenship by investment program. And I totally agree with him here. I don't think any fast-track program is going to be constantly attacked. He also, they mentioned here in the article that Hossam contends opposition stems from philosophical objections rather than security concerns. The EU doesn't want to give the high net worths the ability to move around and be free and go, where they've been treated best. And he says it's not a matter of due diligence, because due diligence companies are based in these first world countries. And he points out that the U.S. was vocal in stating in its major concerns during the roundtables it had with the Caribbean. Now, they went on to say here that Armin Artin, he's CEO of Artin Capital, viewed the Parliament's decision as recognition of balance. Policymakers have recognized the delicate balance between openness and vigilance when it comes to global mobility by adopting a more flexible visa suspension mechanism than initially proposed. He also defended properly governed programs. Investor citizenship and residency programs, when properly governed, can be powerful tools for attracting talent, investment, and innovation. He also says that the new framework rightly seeks to ensure that such programs uphold the high standards of due diligence and integrity. Much of the impact that we're talking about here is likely already priced in. Industry professionals downplayed immediate investor demand concerns. David Lawrence Lincoln, they we're talking about here, who's founder and CEO of Lincoln Global Partners, characterized the development as anticipated with much of the impact likely already priced in. Lincoln described shifting client demographics over recent years. He argues that demand from North America and European investors seeking diversification as a plan B has increased, while investors focused solely on Schengen access now tend to lean towards EU golden visas as a more stable alternative. And I've mentioned to you the two I think that are the best, and those are Ireland and Barbados, because I like their non-dom tax systems. English speaking, they allow dual citizenship. Barbados again has one of the few visa-free countries, or one of the few countries in the Caribbean that have visa-free to Canada. It is the best passport in the Caribbean. Ireland is one of the best in the world. It ranges anywhere from 2 to 3 is the best passports in the world. I think it's the best one because they have the best tax laws. With the highest number of visa-free countries, they allow dual citizenship. I'd put it in number one if you're really looking at all across the board on all those. Now, they went on to say here that Raphael Cintron, who is CEO of Wealthy Expat, distinguished between client segments only applicants from lower tier passport countries like Nigeria, Lebanon, and Algeria, who have the budget for European golden visa might be deterred, he said. For serious investors, the EU vote is background noise. Hossam noted that the 30-day physical presence requirements under discussion in the Caribbean reforms will present variant challenges across investor demographics. You know, the thing about this is I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of countries probably get out of the fast track program, except for the ones that have really bad passports. Trust me, you don't want those passports. You're going to end up getting another one, and you're going to look back and sure, it's only $75,000. Take 75 grand and put in a good equity like Berkshire Hathaway or something that's had a real good track record. Or if you're good at picking equities and you can double your money at 12% every 6 years using the rule of 72, why throw that money down a rat hole? Okay, and that's exactly what you're doing, getting these African passports. You're going to find out you're not going to use them, and you're going to be pissed off with yourself because you're going to take in that money and put it somewhere else and been a lot better use of your money. But they were talking about here, the experts largely dismissed prospects of abrupt Caribbean suspensions. Lincoln characterized a sudden suspension as unlikely, though he acknowledged that the pressure is really on, especially if the goalposts end up changing over time. Now, they went on to say here that Cintron drew a sharp distinction between Vanuatu and Caribbean programs. Vanuatu created a disaster of its own making when authorities approved people with Interpol and red notices and active criminal cases, he explained. And he argues that authorities conducted clearly zero due diligence in many cases. And this is why they did lose their visa-free travel. And also it makes people, when you carry these passports like this, I promise you, immigration people will take you over the side a lot more often, especially if it's from Africa and you don't look like maybe you're from or you speak in a different language and you're carrying these passports that have all kinds of issues and stuff. And some of these African countries are blacklisted. So when you travel on this, your baggages are checked more. It's just a lot of more hassle that you're going to have to deal with. But Hossam offered a bleaker long-term outlook, stating that will the EU ever be happy with any citizenship program? And he went to say absolutely not, and I totally agree. But I think you're going to have a lot less hassle with one of these countries in the Caribbean that have fast-track programs now, but might not have it later. because you'll be in that passport. The key is to get that passport before they convert to where you're going to have to stay there for long periods of time to get the passport and have to do some maybe 3 years of residency. He argues that if the EU wanted these programs to continue because they see value for these countries, they could have, and they would have, or would have had some sort of guidelines to make them better. Now, with Art and Capital frame the reform as an opportunity. The changes represent an opportunity to strengthen cooperation between the governments and the investment migration industry. He argues that by embracing best practices and ensuring that our industry aligns with evolving international standards, we can safeguard both the security interest of states and the mobility rights of individuals who contribute positively to our interconnected world. Competing on price is impossible. Now, Lincoln urged Caribbean programs to adapt to intensifying competitive pressures. He says visa-free access to the Schengen area is no longer a guarantee, and competing on price is impossible with Vanuatu, Nauru, Sao Tome and Principe, and Botswana now all in the mix. He says that the Caribbean citizenship by investment programs offer plenty of other strategic advantages instead of visa-free access, including safe havens close to the United States with favorable tax regimes, good banking, regional settlement rights, and decent mobility. He argues, however, that as new programs launch, targeting offerings around investors from specific niches will become increasingly important as competition heats up. Now, Lincoln suggested innovative approaches to differentiation. St. Kitts and Antigua both accept crypto as a source of income currently. He argues that going further and accepting cryptocurrency as a contribution directly like El Salvador would be an interesting move, though the trade-off in potential extra scrutiny would need to be carefully considered. Now, the legislation requires formal council adoption before taking effect. Once the council publishes it in the official journal, the regulation becomes legally binding for all member states. 20 days later, to date, authorities have revoked visa-free once under the existing mechanism in the case of Vanuatu. Anyway, I think that if you stick with these African countries, sure, they're cheap, but I promise you're going to look back and regret this. Don't go that option. Okay, I've given you options, the best ones to go with. Those are the ones I would go with. And if you're thinking about getting a fast track program, you got the money, I would go with the fast track programs in existence right now, because I can tell you all 5 of them will end up giving up their citizenship fast track programs before they'll lose their visa-free travel. Anyway, if you want to know more, let's go to our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com, and just ask for some help. And folks, again, it would help us out tremendously. If you like our videos, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. At the right of your screen, you'll get new videos automatically as they come out. If you're interested in legally getting your income taxes to zero, how to get a second passport as quick as anywhere from 4 months to a year, go to our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com, and just ask for some help. And I look forward to talking to you in the next video. Take care.